Hi, can you hear me? Hello, welcome into the 21-22 budget for this year. It's really weird when I say 2021-2022. When I started at the city, it was the 2008-2009 budget, and the 20s would have seemed so far away. So welcome to our first budget committee meeting. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but Bates won't let me, so I guess I won't share my screen.
You can now, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to be what I've called this year zooming into the fiscal year 21-22 budget. It's a year ago we were on Zoom for the first time, and I'm still kind of getting used to the idea of doing this virtually and not in person. I do prefer the in-person thing, so maybe there will be a day we'll get back to that. But until then, let's talk about what we're going to do this evening. In a minute, we'll do some welcome and introductions. Especially, I'll have the budget committee introduce themselves so everybody knows who they are. And when we do that, I'll stop sharing screens so we can see everybody a little bit more. The next business item tonight will be electing a committee chair. Councilor Hillier was our chair last year. So we'll be looking for a nomination for a chair, and the committee can pick a chair for this year. Then I sent out the meeting minutes of May 20th of last year. So if we'll go ahead and do an approval of that, the chair will ask for a motion if there's no changes to those minutes. I'll get into the presentation of the budget message after that. And if we have time, we'll do some real brief discussion of the budget like I've done in past years, just a real quick oversight of funds that really don't have any activity in them. And then I'll talk about what the second budget committee agenda will look like on the 22nd. So let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen so we can see everybody. And I am going to ask I wish I should have had my list in front of me, and doing this virtually, it's even harder to do. Nicole, go ahead. Thank you.
Well, I can just tell you, I have everybody marked as present except for Monique Beitman and Councilor Reyes.
Okay.
Otherwise, I have everybody on the committee and council here. So I can't see if those other two are in the meeting or not.
Okay. Do we want to?
I think that's everybody. So if they don't speak up, then you have everybody here.
If you're not here, say aye. Okay, I'd like to have the committee members, when I read your name, just say hi here so that people can see your face and know who you are. So Monique's not here. Chris Brune.
Hello, everyone. This is Chris Brune. Hopefully you can hear me.
Rebecca Deal.
This is Rebecca. I'm driving on hands-free, so I am listening intently, safely.
You hear that, Chief? She's hands-free. John Hannum.
Yep, present. Hello, everyone.
New member, Kelly Horsford.
Hi, everyone.
Brittany Valley.
Hi, everybody.
And last committee member, Veronica Williams.
Hi there.
Well, thank you for going through that. I know that was a little clunky, but it's I'd like at least everybody to see who you are. And then, of course, we have the city council as make up the rest of the committee. At that, it's time to elect a committee chair. Do we have a nomination of anybody?
I'll throw Veronica into the breach. I'd nominate Veronica Williams for chair.
And my favorite mayor doing that to me.
That's right.
That's a second from me.
Okay. We have a nomination for Veronica Williams and a second. I'll just go, all those in favor, you could say aye, and then we'll ask if there's any
Want me to
opposed.
do that, Don? No?
Pardon me?
Did you want me to do that or no? No?
Sure.
Okay, it's been moved by Mayor Bubenik and seconded by John Hannon that Veronica Williams be the Tualatin City Budget Chair for the years 21, 22. All in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. This motion carries, and congratulations, Veronica.
Thank you. And now what is your next business? What do I need to be doing here, Don?
Well, now you will ask for a motion to approve, or if there's any comments on the minutes we sent out. If not, we'll ask for a motion to approve.
Are there any comments on the minutes of the May 2020 budget meeting, which was our last budget meeting? Hearing none, then do I need a motion to approve, or do they stand approved as submitted?
We'll need a motion.
Motion to approve, please.
Motion to approve the minute.
Can you state your name so it's helpful for whoever's?
Was Valerie Pratt, and I believe Nancy Grimes was the second.
Thank you. So all in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then the minutes of May 2020 are approved as submitted. And I think now I turn it over to you, Don.
Yep, and I'll go ahead and share my screen again, and we will start the presentation. Okay, well, welcome. Oh, what a difference a year makes. A year ago, we were sitting here, we did our first, what I call our Brady Bunch style of budgeting. And no, this is not a Sean Brady Bunch style of budgeting, though I got to say it is legal. So this is legal Brady Bunch budgeting. I'm really looking forward to, as I mentioned before, doing back to face-to-face meetings, but unfortunately we're not to that state yet. So we'll continue to do this virtually. While I have adapted to Zoom presentations, I have to say staying seated and having to contain myself and my physical excitement over the budget has been rather difficult. You can tell I really enjoy and love budget season. 2020 was, I'd say, quite a different year, as we can all imagine. Not only did we deal with the pandemic, but in our area, we dealt with racial and social justice issues. Who could forget the smoke from the forest fires that engulfed our area and made it very dangerous levels of air quality. And then, as if 2020 wasn't bad enough, early on in 2021, we had a pretty disastrous ice and snowstorm, which I know our parks maintenance crews, and all our crews did such a great job in, and our parks maintenance crews are still dealing with some of those after effects that we're talking 3 months since that event took place. I kept waiting for the locust invasion to happen, but I got to say, at least we have a vaccine for that plague if it comes through. And hopefully most of you or all of you have gotten at least your first vaccination shot for our pandemic, not our locust invasion. I go for my second one tomorrow, so I'm really looking forward to that. One constant throughout the year, though, was our ability to maintain our service deliveries to our residents and our customers. The library, for example, did a lot of virtual programming. You can see the library mystery Zoom meetings they had. If you haven't gone on their website and looked at the virtual story time with San Wickstrom, which you see here on the movie pack there, and Amy Michael and Kit Lorelei, they had just a really great time putting together the story time. And if you have not taken the opportunity to go on and look at those, I suggest you do. They are rather entertaining, and they did a great job. And I know it's been a very popular item. Library has also done curbside pickup for their collection so that people can continue to borrow items from the library. They did, I know, a number of educational pickup items that people could take home and make crafts. Those have been gone very well. And then, of course, just other great educational opportunities the library has provided throughout this year. The JUANITA Pulse Center was not to be outdone. They have put together a number of virtual fitness programs for our active older adult community. Those have been very popular. They've also done some virtual enrichment programs and even gone on some virtual trips and trails. Again, it's a very active community, and we've been able to keep them engaged through the virtual environment, and staff there has done another great job of putting those programs together. In our Parks and Recreation area, we all know that our staff in Parks and Rec has very creative minds, and they let those creative juices go to work again this year and not to be stopped by our distancing requirements and our restrictions on our events and the number of participations allowed on other events. They utilized CARES Act funding for some community psyche grant program money that was shared with Sherwood, and I believe it was Tigard. It was run through the county for events such as Outrun the Rain and many others. They, again, did a great job of putting events together to kind of keep the community active. Unfortunately, the Pumpkin Regatta this year was unable to be held, but that didn't stop everything. We had the giant pumpkin weigh-off that was virtual, though of course the pumpkins weren't virtual, but people could log on and still participate in the weigh-off virtually. And then this was just another event that was outstanding. Typically in December, they have the Starry Nights Holiday Lights event. Well, of course, that was another event that could not happen. And so they put together the Holiday Lights Parade. And this was over a number of evenings, weekends in December, and a number of participants. They could sign up, register, come get a kit to put on their vehicles. As you can see from this picture, people added on to things that were supplied and traveled through those neighborhoods, and people were lined up outside just enjoying and taking in this great event. And I understand that this is something that will be looked to continue. It was so popular. I think I hit twice. Not go back one. Not to be outdone, our municipal court and our police department were very active this year. Of course, the police department's a 24/7 operation and were very necessary to continue. They were, they were a very important part of the community, but also our municipal court. Obviously, citations were still being issued, and we had to be able to respond to the people who needed to take care of those items. The municipal court staff maintained a high level of service during this time. They continued to do arraignments with socially distanced. They set up so that people could call in, stop in, take care of their items in many different ways. They have even started with phone arraignments. And so people who didn't feel comfortable coming down to the courtroom could call and be able to talk to the judge and have their ticket adjudicated. It's something that we're hoping to continue, at least partially, when we can come back together. But I can tell you that our levels of outstanding citations are minimal compared to a lot of other areas because of the service that was continuing to be provided by that staff. One of the programs in the police department, besides just being there and creating and continuing the safe environment and city that we have, was a prescription pickup program. Not everybody who had the needs for medications could get out safely to get those prescriptions. And so the police department offered a prescription pickup program. So you can see one of our motor officers picking up a prescription for a resident at Walgreens, and then it being delivered. In this picture here is our community service officer dropping off the prescription, and you can see socially distanced communicating with that resident. That was also a very popular program. That was nice that it was something that we could provide and keep people safe and still get the necessary medications they needed. These are just a few examples of the many ways that our staff was creative and creative. We're creative this past year in providing services in the different environment that we found ourselves in. I could highlight many more stories, on top of just the policing, the day-to-day, our infrastructure management, our water, sewer, storm, parks maintenance crews. But if I continue to give you all the different examples, would probably be all here all night listening to me as a storyteller, and I'm sure that's not something you want to do. You get to listen to me enough, and I'm sure you don't want another 3 hours of storytelling from me. Another thing that we were able to use this year, we were able to get some CARES Act funding that was passed down through Washington County for things like procuring personal protective equipment. We were able to install plexiglass in our facilities, not only to protect our employees for their safety and health, but also when we did have some of our facilities that have been open here and there to the public, having it safe for the public as well. We were able to purchase things like masks. Though the picture here, we had some volunteers that sewed together early on a number of masks, and that was available to staff as well. And you see Bates Russell here on the right, letting us know that the virtual environment that he set up for all of us to be able to work remotely and hold meetings such as we're holding tonight, and the city council, that was also funded through the CARES Act funding that we were able to secure through the county by the federal government. Yet last year, when we finalized the current budget, there were a number of unknowns. If you recall, it was May. We were just about a month plus into the pandemic. We were still trying to figure out what this meant to us. We planned for impacts in the budget for impacts through the end of September. Little did we know at that time that we would still be a year later dealing with those impacts. But we were able to adapt to those situations. As it went past September, we adapted to those situations and continued providing those services. As we prepared this year's budget, we do have a lot better feel for what those impacts will be, but we still have a lot of that uncertainty for us. We prepared the budget with our best estimates, knowing that there will be a return to whatever that new normal will be. We don't know when that exactly will happen, but we do know that we will get to a new normal, and but it'll occur slowly, and it will be determined by the course of the pandemic. But we will continue to adapt to that uncertainty as well as that new normal as we go along. With all those things all the impacts and all the things we were able to accomplish, overall, our city budget is decreasing 5.07% over the adopted and amended 2020-2021 budget to $128,341,950. First, let's talk about revenues. As this chart shows, half of our revenue categories are projected to increase this fiscal year. So we're anticipating some recovery in a lot of those revenue sources, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail on those. Because of one-time financing and the CARES Act funding that I've talked about, our total revenues overall are going to decrease 3.26%. Property taxes, which is our most stable and our steadiest revenue sources, we are planning a continuing grow. But I know this is a pretty busy chart, but what I'm showing you here is the blue line there is our assessed value, and you see that continuing to go up. The red line there is the market value. And you can see that since 97-98, when Measure 50 was put into play, and we had the divergence from assessed value and market value. As market value continues to grow even at a higher pace, our assessed values grow at a slower pace. And you can see in how we had a big spike there all the way through about 2008, and then that recession hit, and you see the drop in the market values, but assessed values still continued on And now you're seeing a huge spike again in the market values with our assessed values. The green and teal lines there show our percentage change in our values. So you can see that during the recession, those lines went below zero. We were actually seeing a reduction in market values, and yet you see the growth in our assessed values. Assessed value is what our property taxes are based upon. So we are, you see there, we do see a steady growth, and we have seen over 3.5% assessed value growth all the way back to 2013-14. We are anticipating a growth again this year. One thing I mentioned last year when we talked about property taxes was people were concerned is what would the pandemic have an impact on of our property taxes. And I cautioned that I did not feel we were going to see a decrease in our revenues or a reduction in our revenues. One, because the values are set at January 1st for the next year. So January 1st of 2020, they were already set. So prior to the pandemic, our assessed values were already set. And then we started collecting those taxes in November. But the one piece I did caution was what I thought would happen was that less people would take advantage of the 3% discount if they pay by November 15th and maybe spread their payments out. This chart bears witness of that. That's what we are seeing this year. In November, December, in 1920, we got a little over 96% of our property tax revenue. We're down just over 95% in November, December of this year. And you'll see all the percentages in those red boxes are higher than those gray boxes throughout the other months that we are collecting taxes. So what that told me is that, yes, we are seeing people pay it more over time. Now, what this does tell us, though, or our revenues may not drop significantly because of that, because while it's a cash flow issue for us, people are not getting the 3% discount when they're paying later. They're getting a lesser discount. So I'm interested to see at the end of this year what our revenues look like, because our revenues could be a little bit higher because there's less discounts being taken. I think this trend's going to continue in the next fiscal year as well. So what I am projecting for fiscal year 21-22 is I'm going to go conservative 3% assessed value growth. We are still seeing things hitting the rolls, and I won't know what that tax roll will look like until the fall. I think we're going to still see, my gut tells me it'll be higher than 3%, but what the one piece that's the unknown for us is the industrial properties, the reinvestment in equipment. If they're not reinvesting in equipment, those taxes go down on that equipment, and which is why back on this chart, if you'll see in 2010, 11, that kind of time frame, our assessed value growth was less than 1% or about 1% because we were seeing industrial companies not investing in their equipment, and that dropped our assessed values down. I don't see that happening at this point, but I am going to go a very conservative 3% assessed value growth. It's 21-22 budget. As far as licenses and permits go, the two biggest areas here are our business licenses as well as our building permits and fees. Business licenses, we have seen a decrease from previous year levels, though we had reduced our business license budget a little bit going into the pandemic. We are actually going to exceed the revenue that we had dropped it down to. I don't think we're not going to get back up to the full levels we've seen previously, but we're not seeing a significant drop in there. While we've had some businesses close, we are seeing some businesses taking over in those areas as well. So while I don't think we're going to get to the pre-pandemic levels of business license revenue, I still think we are going to reach somewhere in the middle there and higher than what we had reduced it to for this year. We have not experienced a noticeable decrease in the volume of development activity, though we're not seeing the larger projects. We're seeing a lot of smaller construction and projects going on. So while our building inspection group is still pretty busy, we just don't have a number of the larger events or larger projects going on. That has impacted our current year revenues. fairly significantly. You'll see that next meeting when we go into the building revenues. But we are starting to see some movement on the projects that were put on hold. And so we think the revenues overall next year are going to stay relatively stable for 21-22. So you'll see that we have not changed from the budgetary levels that were in 2021 into 21-22. Our franchise fees and right-of-way category. This is somewhat of a hard to predict because we're just fully now getting a handle on everybody who has have sited in our right-of-way. This is things like the cable and data lines, natural gas. Northwest Natural has their pipes through the right-of-way. PG has their poles and electrical lines. The phone company lines are through our right-of-way, as well as our own water, sewer, and stormwater pipes. We charge a franchise fee or a right-of-way fee for those companies who are utilizing our right-of-way to conduct their business. We recently, a couple years ago, passed a right-of-way ordinance, which is now allowing us to collect on some of those companies that have been using our right-of-way, and it's helping us identify who those companies are. So you'll see a shift in the line items from our franchise fees to the right-of-way fee line, where we're collecting more in those right-of-way fees because we're identifying more of those companies. Northwest Natural has changed from a franchise fee agreement to the right-of-way ordinance, so you'll see that shift as well. Overall, though, we figure that this category is going to stay relatively stable going forward in this 21-22 year as well. The intergovernmental revenues, that is decreasing 17.5%, but largely that is due to these one-time CARES Act funds for the economic stabilization programs that we did this year. We gave out $1.1 million in grants. We kept Jonathan Taylor very busy administering that grant program, and he did an outstanding job in doing so. That was funded by CARES Act funds. Again, $1.1 million in grants. We granted to 118 businesses, of which 80% of those grants were to retail, restaurant, services, hospitality, entertainment, and wellness classified businesses. And one goal and priority for the council, we were to meet by we gave away grants to 35% minority-owned businesses, as well as 51% of those were women-oriented or women-owned businesses. It was quite a successful program. It got money and grant money into the hands of businesses that were really hurting early on and into the later parts of the pandemic of the calendar year. You'll see that category decrease largely because of this money that obviously was one time in the current fiscal year. Our state shared revenues, these are our share of statewide cigarette, liquor, gas, and marijuana taxes. Cigarette taxes are continuing a downward trend, and that has been something that has been a downward trend for a number of years as we're seeing more people that are quitting smoking, and so their cigarette sales are not as large as they used to be. Liquor taxes are projected to decrease. You've probably heard that liquor sales have gone up, but because of the bar closures and some of the other distilled spirits, that we get a higher percentage of those liquor taxes. Obviously, the revenues related to those have gone down, so that we're projecting a slight decrease in those state shared revenues. One line is decreasing and one we're staying stable. Gas taxes, we are showing an increase for the 21-22 budget. Before we adopted the budget last year, ODOT had given us a new estimate for pandemic-related estimates. Obviously, vehicle traffic early on was real light, and people weren't traveling, people weren't going in their cars, therefore we're not buying very much gas. We are seeing, obviously, traffic volumes. If you've been out on the streets, you're seeing the traffic volumes have increased. So we are showing a projected increase in the gas tax revenues. Marijuana taxes, we are seeing a significant decrease in our share of the state shared revenues, and that's due to the passage of Measure 110, which was passed by the voters this last November. Measure 110, if you don't recall, created a state drug treatment and recovery services fund, and it was funded through a redistribution of marijuana tax revenue over a level of $11.25 million per quarter. And these funds were previously distributed to the state school fund, the Oregon State Police, mental health programs, and local governments. So the total reduction in revenues from that passage of Measure 110 is $36.4 million in the upcoming biennium, of which our share of that reduction is approximately $70,000. So our marijuana tax revenue will go from about just over $90,000 to just over $20,000 a year. And that will stay steady. There is no inflator in that $11.25 million cap. And so that's the amount we will get going forward, and it will not change in future years. The other big impact obviously was on the hotel industry. So the transient lodging tax that is paid on hotel stays. Obviously, when people are traveling and they're not staying in the hotels, we see a significant decrease in that. We get a share of the 9% countywide transient lodging tax rate, as well as we have a local 2.5% tax rate. We did cut the budget about half last year at the time, and we are, I think, going to get close to what that projection was, half of what we normally get. You can see this is, 18-19 was kind of our last usual year, a normal year in transient lodging taxes. That's that red line. You can see typically in the wintertime, it drops a little bit, and then we see as it gets into spring and summer, those amounts go up. In 1920, obviously after February, you see that gold line there kind of drop significantly. The green line is the current fiscal year, and we are starting to see trend upward. People are starting to stay in hotels again. I think that'll of course grow once more people are vaccinated and travel starts happening. We are going to add back about 1/3 of the previous reduction. So we're not budgeting back to the previous levels. I don't think we're going to get there next fiscal year, but we are going to start seeing this trend continue, I think. And we're adding about $100,000 back in that line item in the 21-22 budget. Fees and charges, this is experiencing a 36.5% increase. And majority of that is related to the multifamily project that's the former RV Park of Portland site. We had anticipated originally that that project was going to pay their SDCs and the park's SDCs when they started pulling permits at the end of the 1920 fiscal year. They had not pulled permits yet at that point, so they didn't get in that year. Of course, then they've kind of put it on hold again due to the pandemic. We think that it's starting to get back started again. We think that'll start back up in a few months, and then the SDCs will hopefully be paid then in 21-22. So they are budgeted back in 21-22 where they were not budgeted in 2021. And so that's the big piece of that increase in the Parks Development Fund. The other item is the park's utility fee. That is, the ordinance was passed by the council in December. And back in April last month, they set a $5 per month parks utility fee. And that amount is budgeted, and that will take effect on July 1st. And so that is the other part of the major part of the increase in the fees and charges budget or category. Charges for services. This includes the fees for our parks and recreation programs, as well as our water and sewer and storm rates. Passports and fingerprints are also in this category. The rec program revenues, we did not adjust those when we adopted the budget last year. There was a lot of unknowns about what we were going to be able to provide, and so we didn't have the cover level yet to reduce revenues. We had reduced expenditures, but we had held off doing the revenues just because we didn't really know, and that wasn't going to impact the overall budget. If we didn't bring those in, we obviously just weren't going to spend them. Now that we are starting to be able to hold more programs, and the Parks and Recreation staff has a lot of programs planned for this summer, we are going to maintain the levels that we had projected last year, and those are being carried forward into the 21-22 budget. Fingerprint services have not been provided in the current fiscal year with the police department. The lobby's open, but obviously that takes direct, real close contact. So that is a service we have not started back up. Because the city offices building has not been open to the public, we have not been providing passport acceptance services. And we have actually just decided to suspend passport acceptance indefinitely. We have reallocated those resources that were dedicated to that program to other city needs and felt it was better used in that direction. Water rates were raised in July in compliance with our master plan, but we did not raise sewer and stormwater rates. Clean Water Services had made the decision not to raise their rates until they were going to look at it again in the fall to potentially raise them in January. The City Council chose that same path. Clean Water Services decided then in December not to raise their rates at all in this fiscal year. And we had a discussion at the council level in January and determined that we could continue the full year without a rate increase in the sewer and stormwater rates as well. So that did not get raised this last year. In all those areas, they are anticipated to be increased in the 21-22, so effective July 1st of this year. We'll talk a little bit more the specifics of each of those rates at our next meeting when I go over those funds, and I'll talk about all the different rates that are projected to increase. We've been able to maintain our rate increases at the levels that we would have done this year in both those areas. Clean Water Services has a little bit higher rate increase because they did not increase this year. But again, we'll talk a little bit more about those at our next meeting. Fines and forfeitures, the two pieces. This category is scheduled to increase. Obviously, with more traffic being out on the streets again, there are more traffic violations. And so our citation levels are increasing or projected to increase. Another factor in the citation levels is we previously had an officer that was assigned to the Transit West Side Police Force. We no longer have an officer on that task force. They are now back in Tualatin full time. And so we've determined, the police have determined for a long time that they really needed a kind of more of a dedicated traffic officer on the swing shift hours. So for evening commute, because the two regular traffic officers work day shift. And because we have a lot of traffic during the evening commute, traffic accidents, we now have a traffic officer in a car during the swing shifts to be able to respond to those incidents. But of course, there are also then more traffic violations. So we think that will happen. Those will increase as well with this officer, the swing shift traffic officer on the streets. The other item that you see here is the library. The library went fine free this last year on overdue items. That was something that was through the whole county library system. And Jerry Ann Thompson brought that forward to the city council, and council agreed to go along with that. So our library is now fine free for overdue items. And so you'll see the reduction in the revenue in that line item to kind of offset a little bit of the increase in the rest of that category. Transfers and others are our largest decrease in the revenues this coming year. The biggest part of that is in the 2021 budget, we had a $4 million one-time loan proceeds revenue. That was the loan we took out for the remaining part of the Tualatin City Services building project. And so that's in the current 2021 budget, not in the 21-22. So you see a significant decrease in that category. The other item that makes up the decrease here is our investment portfolio yields. Sure, you've all heard that our investment, the interest rates on investments have dropped significantly. You can see by this chart that back, a year ago, we were up in the 2% range, and now we're down in the 1.5, less than 1. The red line there is our state investment pool. And prior to going with an investment advisor and diversifying our portfolio and going out the different time frames, We had all our money in the state pool. When we sold the transportation bonds, we had to do something additional to the pool because of the limits. And so we went with our advisor. Our bond proceeds are invested there, as well as other idle city funds. By diversifying and going out further, we've been able to maintain higher rates than we would revenues by those interest rates than we would have gotten in the state pool. As you can see, the state pool is about 0.6% right now, and we are still earning about a 1.5% on our bond proceeds and just about 1.25% on our other portfolio. So we're seeing that start to drop because as investments mature that have a higher interest rate, we have to reinvest those at a lower rate. So you'll continue to see over time this drop. But we are still at a decent place. So in all our funds, our investment revenue lines, you'll see those down significantly. Moving on to expenditures, our total requirements, less our contingencies, reserves, and unappropriated fund balance is decreasing about 9 1/3%. And that's dropping down to $68,287,350 for the upcoming fiscal year. The biggest decrease here, excuse me, is in our capital outlay, showing about a 38% decrease. That is not due to that we're not doing a bunch of capital projects this year. We are actually maintaining a high level of capital projects this year. But the decrease is related to 3 projects that will be completed in 2021 that are really exciting projects for us and that drive this. The first is the Tualatin City Services Building. If you've driven down Herman Road recently, you've seen the Tualatin City Services Building. That is an extension of the old Public Works Operations Building on the corner there. That building got remodeled as well as the addition out there. That is pretty much completed now. There's just a few items left to go, but staff has moved in there. This is holding all our development services functions, so community developments out there for building, planning, and engineering. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for our development community, as well as anybody that's doing a smaller project. It also houses, though, the rest of our public works staff, our water, sewer, storm, street crews, as well as our parks maintenance crews, and our maintenance services teams are out there as well. Additionally, our municipal court staff has moved out there. So when you walk in the front door, you look to your left, you get the smiling faces of the 3 court clerks and our court administrator. They're there to help everybody with their court citations, and we will be holding arraignments in the big multi-use room that is also part of that facility when we're back to full arraignment sizes. We do have people coming out there now. We do have people still show up on Thursdays for court, and that is held in that multi-use room. We do like it because it's a one-stop shop for a lot of our services, especially on the development side. What this building also allowed us to do is consolidate other functions, like functions, and create other one-stop shop opportunities. Administration was leasing space in the Seneca building across from the library. We've been able to move the staff out of that building, so we're no longer leasing space. Administration has moved into the city offices building, as well as my staff, my finance and accounting staff that was in Lafke House in the community park. They've now relocated into the city offices building. So now we have kind of the one-stop internal services functionality along with the utility building in the city offices. That's going to create some efficiencies with having legal, HR, admin, finance, and others all in one area that we can communicate and work together. And of course, then the library is right next door to us, and when we have needs for a book and just some great information that they provide for us. The second in the library, speaking of the library, is the Makerspace Classroom. That is an exciting project that last I heard is projected to be done in May or later this month. Jerry Ann, I can see you there, so nod your head if May is still the projection. Thank you. I was in there, I stopped in yesterday and saw that kind of where they're at on that. It's starting to take some shape. It's exciting. It's a collaborative creative space that will allow people to create physical objects and digital media. And it provides hands-on education in the areas of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, or STEAM. You might remember that we have a mobile makerspace trailer that was part of the community revitalization plan that was part of the America's Best Community competition back in 2016. And now we're able to now have a permanent space for those educational opportunities. And it's going to be a very exciting space in the library when we can open back up safely. The last is the Tualatin's Common Splash Pad project, which is scheduled to be done this summer. This is being funded by a combination of city funds and state parks and rec grant monies. We're upgrading the splash pad with current technology and new and improved spray patterns. And I'm glad that it's not functioning right now, because otherwise I might be getting awful wet standing in the middle of it, giving you this presentation. Jokes get worse as the night goes on, so just preparing you. That might be the last one, I'm not sure. But even with those projects completed, we are seeing a $12.7 million capital outlay budget, mostly for the water, sewer, stormwater, and transportation projects. The picture here on the right is of longtime employee Inspector Mike Darby, who retired this last year after it was like 43 years or something like that with the city. It was just amazing amount of time, and he has seen pretty much everything in the city built. He had a hand in, but this was his last inspection, this picture, and we definitely miss Darby out on those construction sites, but good luck to him in his retirement. But we are seeing a lot of those infrastructure projects that are continuing in the fiscal year. But we are budgeting for design on 2 projects that we hope that will be able to be starting construction maybe in the next fiscal year if funds are available. Both these projects that I'm going to talk about had extensive public engagement processes to discuss the location as well as the amenities. The first is the Veterans Memorial Project, and that is being funded for design in this upcoming budget as well. In its preferred location after that process was on the east end of the Commons, and you see a overhead picture here of what location they're looking at. Again, the plan for the design of that project in this upcoming fiscal year. The second is a significant playground renovation of Stone Ridge Park. And I'm getting a message that something stopped working, but hopefully, oops. Okay, my PowerPoint stopped, so let me go back in while we talk about that. But the again was a very extensive process for that for those amenities. Pardon me while I get back into that. So you get a little preview of what's coming next. Obviously, I picked the wrong spot to go to. There we go. So the Stone Ridge, again, the Stone Ridge significant renovation out at Stone Ridge Park. You see again from the process that was very involved with the community in that area. They have a preferred design. We have some drawings, but now this will go into the actual full design of the project. And we're excited about what could be done in that area as well. The Tualatin Moving Forward program is moving forward and has a busy year with a number of projects. You can see the projects that are on the list and in the budget, the Garden Corner Curves, the Martinazzi-Sagard Signal, the Tualatin Sherwood Road, Martinazzi to I-5, and then some other crossings and areas. So that will be a very busy and active program as well this year. So I know at one time or another, I did probably tell the departments to prepare your budget in such a way so that you can continue providing services at levels you are currently providing them. The premise was given to them to kind of keep things as they're doing right now, continue to provide the services, but only budget in things that are outside of the city's control, known increases, contractual obligations, but anything beyond that, not include in the budget. We would consider them if our ongoing revenues were sufficient to cover additional ongoing expenditures. And we also allowed for some ad packages to be submitted and reviewed. And ad packages are things that are new services, capital, new capital items. And we were able to fund a number of those, mostly one time, but some ongoing. I'll talk about those in a second. Personal services, this line has about a 4% increase. This is our labor force and factors in contractual obligations for step increases, cost of living allowances that are under collective bargaining agreements, as well as health and dental, and our PERS benefits are in this line item as well. We did see lesser increases in PERS as well as our health and dental benefits, so that is not increasing as much as we might have anticipated prior to that. So we got some pretty good news in that category. That is one of our largest expenditure categories that you can see. In the materials and services, again, this is the department's doing a great job of maintaining current levels and keeping those steady. So we are seeing a 1.14% decrease in this category for the 21-22 budget. As I mentioned, we were able to fund a majority of the ad package requests, mostly one time, but others ongoing. In the police department, we have 3 initiatives that are being funded this upcoming year. The first is the body-worn camera program and policy. So the police department will be going down the path of procuring body-worn cameras and putting together that program and those policies related to that. With a second thing, with a growing number of crimes that are committed that have technology evidence in them, it has overwhelmed the Washington County Digital Forensics Laboratory. So the Tualatin Police Department, along with other neighboring entities, are going in together to help fund an additional position in the forensics lab, the digital forensics laboratory. And so we're hopeful that will help with some of the backlog and keep that program moving forward. The last one, again, is a partnership with some neighboring entities, and that is going in with some neighboring agencies with a mental health clinician position. And this will be part of the Washington County Mental Health Department's mental health response team. And what this does is it pairs a regular officer with a master's level clinician. And what this does is it gives us an opportunity to problem solve at the scene, which then minimizes the risk of the situation escalating. But what it also does is by having this clinician available, it helps follow up to ensure that the individual that has the needs is getting connected to services and support that they need even beyond the incident. Obviously, we know that mental health response is a significant need in the area. And so being able to add to the mental health response team and having a dedicated clinician in our area is something that we're looking forward to with this program. And that's funded in the next budget. 2 other initiatives are a diversity, equity, inclusion consultant to help review our policies, our procedures, our processes to help us identify potential changes in those areas. And then the climate action plan, which is part of meeting the council vision and priority related to being an environmentally responsible community. And so the climate action plan is budgeted in the next fiscal year. We have the whole amount budgeted next year. As you see this timeline, it'll probably extend into the next fiscal year a little bit, so we'll carry over whatever funds are needed into that next fiscal year. The last thing I'd like to share a little bit about is the American Rescue Plan. It was signed by President Biden on March 11th. It includes funding for state and local governments to respond to the impacts of the pandemic. There is direct funding to the city of Tualatin, actually direct funding through through the state, we are not what's called a non-entitlement city. Entitlement cities are those that get direct funding on the community development block grant program. Because our CDBG funds come through the county, we're considered a non-entitlement entity. So our funds will come through that side of it. We are estimated to get $5.67 million. But I was on a call right before this meeting with US Treasury, and they will not confirm those amounts until next week sometime. So they have not completed the allocations. I don't anticipate those to change much, but we won't see that exact final number until next week. They did finally provide guidance on those. That came out today. There's an 8-page fact sheet, an 18-page frequently asked question sheet, and a 151-page interim final rule. So once this meeting's over, I'm going to probably curl up with a good book and my 151 pages of interim final rule, and it won't have a synopsis for you next week. Anyway, that payments are coming in 2 different pieces. The first half comes this year. So they're just now starting to send out to the entitlement cities. Right about now, our money will get sent to the state, and then they'll have 30 days to turn it around to us. So we'll see our first half of that money sometime in June. And then the other half will come 30 days or no less than 1 year from that point. And we have until December 31st of 2024 to spend that money. Some key considerations that we talked to council about before was we want to be able to maximize the funds, and it gives us really the opportunity to collaborate regionally and at the state level. We don't want to be doing the same programs that everybody else is doing. We want to collaborate, make those programs go further, and that also then frees up some of the money to be utilized in other areas. Obviously, we want to balance the programs so that we comply with those guidances that I was talking about, but not be too restrictive or too burdensome. We want to get the money in the hands of where it's needed, we determine that that's the best place for those. To do that, though, we have to understand what that guidance is, what those purposes, what's eligible, come up with a strategic approach to utilize those funds. And so the council, I talked with the council last month, we were all in agreement that it's good now to take the time to think about it broadly, strategically, and then come up with those programs. So there'll be more coming forward. I will probably have something at our next meeting to add that fund and add those funds to it. Now that we'll have a better idea in the next couple of weeks what the uses of that fund might be. Lastly, the Tualatin Development Commission will be seeing some significant activity this year. We are going to help utilize or help allocate the remaining funds in the Leviton district by a significant amendment in that area. And then we are looking at 2 proposed districts, one down in the Basalt Creek area that would use the Basalt Creek and the Southwest Industrial Plan area plans to help guide what projects would be utilized for the urban renewal there. And then there will be some visioning of what's called Study Area 2, kind of in the downtown area. There we go. I can say this past year has been quite a wild ride. And unfortunately, the upcoming year is still filled with a little level of uncertainty. But we have persevered. We've been resilient. We've navigated all that has been thrown at us. And this budget, as you look at it, and our financial condition that you'll see by viewing this budget, is just another example of the great work the employees and the leaders of the city have continued to do every year. I think you'll see that we have a solid budget put in front of you. We'll talk more at our next meeting. I see I have run this right up to about the 6 o'clock time. I can go on for about another 5 or so minutes and start the discussion, or I can just carry this over into our next meeting. Sherilyn, do we have another 5-10 minutes to just go
Yes,
high level of that, or?
We have an executive session after this, but I think we have plenty of time. I think we probably need 45 minutes for that, so we probably have an extra 15 minutes.
I'll just go real quickly here then, thank you. There's a couple things. The one thing I really want to point out, because I want to mention this because you will notice this, something new in our budgets this year. We are embarking on performance measures. This is something that we have been receiving the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for a number of years now with the Government Finance Officers Association. One of the new requirements that is now a requirement in that program is to show performance measures in your budget. And it's not something that we have laid out individually. We have done a lot of goals, but we've not had actual measures. So we asked the departments this year to do put together a couple different performance measures in their area, but we wanted them to be simple and meaningful. We wanted them to be outcome-based, not just output-based. So an output base is hold 23 city council meetings per year. Well, I call that a duh. I mean, it's in our charter where we have 2 meetings a month. In December, we have 1 meeting. We're going to hold 23 meetings a month. That's not really a meaningful performance measure. But we want something like this, and this is a format that you'll see in the budget. This comes out of our parks maintenance area. A number of community planning events held to help restore natural areas. And so where we had data available, you will see the actual numbers for 18-19 fiscal year and 19-20 fiscal year. So you see they had 8 events in 18-19, 4 events in 19-20. In 2021, all columns will show not applicable because we did not adopt performance measures in the year. Didn't mean we weren't doing these things, but because this is an adopted column, we show not available. And then we've asked the departments to, what is your goal, or what do you think is going to happen the next year? So the goal for planning events is 4 in the coming fiscal year. And again, linear feet of gravel surfaces. So you will see this throughout the budget where we had meaningful performance measures available, we put those in. So the revenues, and I'll send this out to you so that you see the pages. In these areas, the core area parking district, we're maintaining the 2021 levels. Again, we had reduced that just a little bit on the revenue side due to the pandemic. Again, we've seen some businesses close down, but we've seen others take their place. So we're maintaining the current level. In the scholarship fund on page 70, you'll see that we don't have any additional, we did not receive a grant this year for a scholarship. We have very little interest revenue. So on the expenditure side, you see we are not budgeting a scholarship this year either. In the development funds, the transportation development, park, water, sewer, and stormwater, these are all maintaining the estimated levels of the SDCs, except for the parks one, which I talked about. With that multifamily project coming in, you'll see a significant increase in that. But all of the other revenue levels in the development funds are maintaining stability. And then the last would be the vehicle replacement fund. That is just showing continued contributions from the utility funds to help us then expend in the future. What we've been doing is growing that fund for the last few years by contributions from the utilities to set aside monies to be able to expend or buy new vehicles out of this fund instead of having it as part of their operating funds. I believe in 22-23 we'll have enough money in there to start actually buying vehicles out of that fund. But for 21-22, we're continuing the contributions without any additional projected expenditures out of that. Again, in the scholarship fund, we're accumulating interest, but there's not enough in there we didn't feel comfortable awarding a scholarship this year with the level of funds. We have to maintain a minimum amount in that fund in order to continue that. And so we're going to just build that up and not award a scholarship in 21-22. On the park development fund, The completion of the splash pad renovation is budgeted in here, as well as the parks planning for the Basalt Creek area. There's a process going on right now to help plan a park in that area. So those are budgeted in this fund. Water Development Fund, we have some growth-related projects that there's a share of it that are growth-related that are going to be funded by the Water Development Fund. This is the Blake to 115th water line, Leviton fire flow line project, and then system improvements to our SCADA alarm system on our water system are also factored into this fund this year. Again, in the sewer side, we have some projects that have a portion of system development charge eligible funding, 105th Avenue sewer project and the Martin Avenue trunk line. The good news on this is these are being reimbursed 100% by Clean Water Services. We turn over 94% of the SDCs for sewer to Clean Water. They then spend those out on regional projects. So these do qualify for that part, and we are still, so those are being funded this year. Stormwater development, we do have some money in here for a stormwater master plan in the Basalt Creek and the Southwest Concept Plan areas. So we did pass a stormwater master plan recently, but this is a separate needed stormwater master plan specifically in that area. And so that is budgeted in the upcoming fiscal year as well. And then the Transportation Development Tax Fund, proportional shares of the Garden Court Curves project and the Martin Sager traffic signal. A majority of this is funded through the bond project. A portion of it is impact related, so therefore can be paid by the TDT funds. Also, there's some Tualatin Sherwood Road utility relocation work that needs to be done in coordination with the Washington County project that will be funded out of the TDT this year. And lastly, the core area parking district. There are 5 lots in the downtown core area, and that just shows the budgeting for the ongoing maintenance of those parking lots. And then I already mentioned the 3 areas in the Tualatin Development Commission that are budgeted. The extension of Herman Road in the Leviton district and doing a significant amendment to be able to do that project, and then the 2 proposed districts as well. So I know I went through that quickly. This is not your only opportunity to look at those funds. I'll be more than happy to discuss any of those at our next meeting as well. There's not, as you can tell, there's not a lot of activity in those, so we just kind of left it. I just want to kind of go over those. I won't go into detail the next meeting unless someone has questions about them. But what we will do in 2 weeks is we'll have minutes for tonight's meeting for approval. There's a required public hearing for state revenue sharing. I ask you as you go through your budget, as I have in past years, to send me your questions in advance. That gives me the opportunity to put them all together in one question and answer document, and then also know areas to highlight in the next meeting. The sooner you get them to me, the better, but please send them to me ahead of time. Still be more than happy to answer anything that night that you don't, but I do ask that if you can send me questions in advance. We'll continue our discussion on our operating funds, the remaining funds that night. We'll take any public comment, and hopefully at the end of that meeting, we'll be ready to ask for your consideration of approving our budgets. At that, I will answer any questions and turn it back over to the chair.
Are there any further questions for Don? Seeing, hearing none. Do I need a move to adjourn this portion of the meeting?
That'd be great. Yes, please.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn the meeting of the Budget Committee for the 21-22 budget. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you all. If you have any questions, let me know, and otherwise I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.